I was muted, so I don't know if you all heard me. Namo Ramana. Thank you.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Prostrations to Ramana, who shines as the self in all beings. We begin this satsang with the prayer, which will be followed by the chanting of Muktaka trayam by Sri Nandakumarji. Dakshinamurtisarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Ramanacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam Vande Guru-paramparam Vande Guru-paramparam Shuklam Baradharam Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vighnopashantaye Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya Vachikam Sarvavangmayam Aharyam Chandrataradi Tam Namah Satvikam Shivam. Namo Ramana.
Ekam aksharam hrudi nirantaram bhasate swayam likyate katham hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram yaham maham iti sakshat atmarupena bhati hrudi vishamanasa chinvata majjata anachalanarudha atmanishto Deham ranmayavat jadatmakam aham buddhirnatasyasmyato naham tattata bhava shukti samay siddhatma sadbhavata koham bhavayuta kuto maradhiya drishtatmanishtatmana soham spurtitaya arunachala shivaha purno vibhati swayam soham spurtitaya arunachala shivaha स्वयं नमो रमना.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the chanting of Upadesa Saram by Uma and Ashwini Balaji.
नमो रमण. वायुरोधनात् क्लियते मन जालपक्षिवद्रोदसादनम् चित्तवायवश्चित्क्रियायुताः शाकयोर्द्वयी शक्तिमूलक लयविनाशने उभयरोदने लयगतं पुनर्भवति नो मृतम् प्राणबन्धनात् नीयमानसम् एकचिन्तनान्नाशमेत्यद नष्टमानसो उत्कृष्टयोगिन कृत्यमस्ति किं स्वस्तितिं यत दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मना चित्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्ग आर्जवात् वृत्तयस्त्वहं वृत्तिमाश्रिताः वृत्तयो मनो विद्यहं मनः आमयं कुतो भवति चिन्वत ऐपतत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशभ जमान्तय स्फुरतिरुत्स्वयं परमपूर्णस इदमहं पद विद्यमन्वहम् अहमिनीनके विरय सत्तया. नमो रमण.
Namo Ramana. We will now have 3 songs from Ramananjali Sangeetam. The first one will be by Srimati V. Radha along with Vallabh. The second one will be by Savitri Krishnan and Jaisriram Krishnan. The third song will be presented by Revathi Shankar.
Namo Ramana to all. Today we will be singing a song written by Sri Sadhu Om Swami, and the music is by Sri L. Krishnan. கிஞ்சுமடியா நெஞ்சமிருந்தருள் கொஞ்சும் ரமணா நமோ நமோ. கிஞ்சுமடியார் நெஞ்சமிருந்தருள் கொஞ்சும் ரமணா நமோ நமோ. கை கூப்பிடுவார் மே காத்து அருள்வோய், கை கூப்பிடுவார் மே காத்து அருள்வோய். கருணா ரமணா நமோ நமோ, கருணா ரமணா நமோ நமோ. கிஞ்சும் அடியார் நெஞ்சமிருந்தருள் கொஞ்சும் ரமணா நமோ நமோ. குரு ரமணா சத்குரு ரமணா சத்குரு ரமணாய நமோ நமோ. குரு ரமணா சத்குரு ரமணா சத்குரு ரமணாய நமோ நமோ. சத்குரு ரமணாய நமோ நமோ. காரணமில்லா கருணை கடலே கத்தியே ரமணா, காரணமில்லா கருணை கடலே கத்தியே ரமணா, கத்தியே ரமணா. கிஞ்சும் அடியார் நெஞ்சமிருந்தருள் கொஞ்சும் ரமணா நமோ நமோ. பூரண ஞானம் அளித்தல் புரியும் காரண குருவே நமோ நமோ. பூரண ஞானம் அளித்தல் புரியும் காரண குருவே நமோ நமோ. காரண குருவே நமோ நமோ. கிரி அருணாச்சல மறை ஒளிமணியே அருணை ரமணா, கிரி அருணாச்சல மறை ஒளிமணியே அருணை ரமணா, அருணை ரமணா. கிஞ்சும் அடியார் நெஞ்சமிருந்தருள் கொஞ்சும் ரமணா நமோ நமோ. கை கூப்பிடுவார் மே காத்து அருள்வோய், கை கூப்பிடுவார் மே என்னை காத்து அருள்வோய் கருணா ரமணா நமோ நமோ கருணா ரமணா நமோ நமோ ரமணா 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 இஞ்சுமடியாய் நெஞ்சமிருந்தருள் கொஞ்சும் ரமணா நமோ 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 ரமணா.
ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ஒன்று நினையாதிரு சும்மாவென்று உரைப்போன் பாதம் வாழவே என்றும் உள்ளத்தை இருத்து உன்னிடத்தென்று இசை போன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே தீச தீச சனி தீச சனி பனி பமாம பனி சரி தீச சனி சரி 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 மாமா ரி மா பா 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 சனி பனி பமாம ரி கமலி சா ஆன்ம விசாரம் அயர்ந்து விடேதென்று அறைவோன் பாதம் வாழவே ஆன்மஸ்வரூபம் அடையும் வரையென்று அருள்வோன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே பபமரி சரி சரி கமரி சரி ம ப ப ப ப நி ம ப நி நி சா சா நி 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 சா சா ச நி ப நி ப மரி ம ப மரி நி சா ஊனோடுற்ற உல ஒளியும் என்று உரைப்போன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே நானாரென் விசாரத்தாரென் நல்லோன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே பனி நி நி சரி சனி சரி ரி சா சனி ப ப சா ச சா நி நி சனி பனி ப ப ம ம ப ம க மரி சரி க மரி ஆனந்தன் தான் மேலெழுமென்றறிவோன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே நான் உள்ளெழுந்த அழுந்த என்னும் நம்பி பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே மா ப நீ ச சனி ப ப ப நீ சரி ரி ரி சனி சா சரி க ம ரி ச ச சா சனி ப ப ரி ம ப நி சா நி ப ம ரி உள் உலகீஷனை விடேதென்று உரைப்போன் பாதம் பாடவே அந்நிய போர்வரினும் வழியென்று அறைவோம் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே மகம சரி 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 ச Sari pa ma 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 ri sari pa ma ri ma pa ni 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 sari sari sa 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 ni ri sa 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 ni pa ri sa தாவினயன் தடுமனவென் தலைவன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ஆவியை ஈஷற்கு அடித்தனது வென்று அருள்வோன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே பரிமள சனி சரி சனி சா ரீம பாப பானி நி பாப பரி ரிப மரி ரிம மம சரி சா ச ரிம ம பாப நி பரி பாப ரி சரி ரி சரி சா ச சனி ரி மரி சரி சனி சனி பனி ப மரி சனி சித்தம் சதித்து சேர்ந்திடு ஜீவர் பக்தியில்லா பாவிகளாயினும் சிசு துயர் கண்டு தேற்றும் தாய்போ கசிந்து கருணை கண்ணீர் ததும்ப இன்று சொல்லி ஏங்கும் மனதை மன்னதேற்ற மன்னன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே ஜபிக்கின் மந்திரம் சித்தம் ஒடுங்கும் என்போன் பாதம் வாழவே ஜபம் விசார சாதனமென்னும் சித்தன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே ரமணன் பாதம் வாழவே நமோ ரமணாய நமோ ரமணாய நமோ ரமணாய நமோ 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 ரமணாய நமோ ரமணாய நமோ ரமணாய நமோ நமோ நீதி நாடலு ஜோதி விளங்கும் நீதி நடனா நமோ நமோ முப்பொடியற்றமடும் பொருளே என்னை கைப்பிடி கொண்டோய் நமோ நமோ மூலவகந்தை ஒழிய ஞானாதி மூட்டும் குருவே நமோ நமோ ஸ்ரீ பொருளாவினை மாற்றும் ஸ்பரிஷ தேவி ரமணா நமோ நமோ நேருவை விட்ட மகாவருணாச்சலம் தேவிய ரமணா நமோ நமோ மைரித்தடியா கனமய கருக்கும் மைவித்தயனே நமோ 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 ரமணாய நமோ ரமணாய நமோ ரமணாய நமோ 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 ரமணாய நமோ ரமணாய நமோ ரமணாய நமோ நமோ ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Bhagavan is the one who is the incarnation or the personification of compassion, Arul. And by coming onto this earth as Ramana, taking the form of Ramana, he removes all the darkness in our lives. And how is that darkness removed? By giving us his own state, his own padam. Because Bhagavan has given his compassion to us, because he has given his grace to us, because he has blessed us, all the non-true things, all the lies in our lives goes away without even any pinch of trace. There is no trace of any lies in our life when there is Bhagavan's grace. And he tells us how to go within, how to attain that state. And he does this with lot of love, and he does it with true love. He stays in Arunachala, and he is the peak of compassion. He removes the idea of death in our lives. When a thought arises, it has to die. So, if it doesn't arise, there is no death at all. So, he teaches us how to be in that self and be happy all the time. He is the Chintamani who makes our lives a Chintamani and not a wish fulfilling stone. He makes us itself a wish fulfilling stone and not only fulfills our wishes. And when we surrender to Him, He gives us all that we want by giving us the self knowledge. When we attain the self, everything is attained. If we want something or we don't want something, everything is given to us by attaining the self. And once we get self knowledge, it doesn't matter what we get or what we don't get. I present to you a song written by Ramanatha Brahmachari, music by Sri L. Krishnan and Rajkumar Bharti. Ramanan, Ramanan, Arule, Ramanan, 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 Arule, Ramanan, Arule, Uruvayamarum, Ramanan, Irule, Dumila, Padamindanane, Arule, Uruvayamarum, Ramanan, Irule, Dumila, Padamindanane, Ramanan, Ramanan, Arule, Ramanan, 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 Arule, Ramanan, Ayyan Ramanan, அருள் தந்ததனால் பொய்யாம் வினை போன வகை அறியேன் உய்யும் வழியன் உளமுற்றதனால் மெய்யன்பெனை வந்து விழுங்கியதே ரமணன் ரமணன் அருளே ரமணன் 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 அருளே ரமணன் அருணாபுரிவாள் அருள்வேதியனாம் கருணாமுகிலோன் கவலை களைவோன் மரணாதிய மயக்கம் மறுத்தருளும் தருணாருண ஞானதயா பரனே ரமணன் ரமணன் அருளே ரமணன் 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 அருளே ரமணன் சிந்தாமணியாகிய சின்மயனே மந்தாகினி மைந்த மகாஷயனே கந்தா கருணாலய தேசிகனே எந்தாபமகற்றியருள் குஹனே ரமணன் ரமணன் அருளே ரமணன் 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 அருளே ரமணன் சரணாகதியாகிய சின்மயனே சரணாகதியாய் அடையும் தமியே மரணாதிமயக்கமறுத்தருள்வாய் கருணாநிதியாகிய வேங்கடமா அருணாச்சலமாயமர் ஜோதியனே அருளே உருவாயமரும் ரமணன் இருளேதுமிலா பதமீந்தனனே அருளே உருவாயமரும் ரமணன் இருளேதுமிலா பதமீந்தனனே ரமணன் ரமணன் அருளே ரமணன் 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 அருளே ரமணன் 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 அருளே ரமணன் 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 Arule Ramanan. Namo Ramana. We will now have the reading and sharing from the book Bhagavan Ramana, the Resplendent Sun by Sri Nandakumarji.
Namo Ramana. In this, the book reading segment of our satsang, we continue our readings from Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi, The Resplendent Sun, Angles of Vision by Shri A.R. Natarajanji, our founder president. We have seen and read articles by many of the great beings of that time, Swami Brahmananda, Devraj Mudaliar, Douglas Harding, Swami Shivananda ji, MP Pandit. But all those articles were like angles of vision, as the title, the angles of vision title is there, that they took up one part of their experience and revealed something very, very beautiful from that. And the author feels the necessity to have the whole teachings also covered. So he has contributed this article, which covers Bhagavan's teachings end to end and gives perspective to the book as a compilation of various experiences of the great ones. This article, which we have started last week, a practical guide on the Ramana way to know yourself, an introduction by A.R. Natarajanji. We had seen the subheadings, the crowded mind, where he reminded us that the past and the unwanted thoughts are like a marketplace or like a railway station at peak hour, and we are hesitant to go into that silence which Bhagavan says, the fear of silence he was referring. Then he talks of how Bhagavan, his very life, gives us the courage and encouragement to walk the path towards that silence, and we learn to be in the present. And we had also covered a little bit of how attention to the subject, attention to the I, is the primary sadhana given, and we continue our gleanings from there. The absence of the sense of individuality in sleep would also confirm one's doubt that there is more to us than our assumed individuality. For we cannot be that which comes and goes. There can be no break in consciousness. He's still talking of how to hold the I. The matter could also be looked at from another point of view. The assumption behind the idea that one is the body and or the mind is that both the body and mind are self-conscious. See, we are self-conscious. We are aware of our existence. But when we say I am the body, we are implying that the body is self-conscious. And when we identify with the mind, that the mind is self-conscious. But both are not self-conscious and not available in deep sleep. He's going to take us through that. The assumption behind the idea that one is the body and of the mind is that both the body and the mind are self-conscious. Taking the body first, let us look at its state at the time of death. The body might be perfectly healthy, it might be young, yet it is called a corpse the moment the life force leaves it. Ramana would say that were it not so, the body would get up while being taken for cremation or burial and protest. Ramana's reflection on this matter began at the age of 12 when his father died. His father's body was there apparently as if in sleep, but there was a difference, making him infer that his father's I had left his body, that which was self-conscious, which was aware that I am existing, that has left the body. Reference has already been made to the daily experience of sleep, where there is no body consciousness. Ramana would say that body would then be taken to be dead, but for the divine plan, which continues the respiration at a low ebb in deep sleep. The mind, the identification with mind, the author is going to take up. The mind, its nature and source. Where does the mistake lie in our identifying ourselves with the mind? Operationally, our sense of existence is related to thoughts. Only thoughts give one the feeling of being alive, of being vital. The mistake here is that if one goes into the question, what is the mind? It would be seen that there is no such independent entity as the mind. Ramana would drive home this point by his remarks like, show me the mind and I will strike it down. Ask her if there is such a thing as mind. If so, what is its form? Does it have a mustache and a beard? Why are these statements made? It is because that which we call the mind is intangible. It is only the aggregate of thoughts with a central thought, I am so and so. At any given time, the mind is this core thought and the associated thoughts on which the attention is focused. Thus, it would be ever-changing. One cannot be that which is intangible and always fleeting. Because earlier it was said that our consciousness should not have a break. If one is not the body or the mind, what is one's true identity? How is one to find out? In the Ramana way, the key to everything is to be found in the spiritual heart, which is different from the physical organ bearing the same name. It is at once, the heart is at once the seat of consciousness and the source of the mind. It is the primary energy source which utilizes the mind and the body. This energy is transmitted through channels called nadis from the heart to the mind first and from there to the different parts of the body. It alone is self-luminous. The heart alone is self-luminous. The mind and the body only reflect its light of consciousness. So the question is answered that the mind and body are not self-aware, are not aware of their own existence. The consciousness is led to them from the heart. The mind and the body only reflect the heart's light of consciousness. Just as the dynamo supplies the motive power to the whole systems of lights, fans, etc., so also this primal force supplies the energy for the beating of the heart, for respiration, etc. The mind rises from the heart on waking and subsides into the heart when sleep overtakes. So the mind rises when we awake from deep sleep, and when we go back to deep sleep, it subsides into the heart. Since its origin is from the heart, the mind is naturally pure. It is like a wave in the sea of consciousness. However, when latent tendencies are there, the mind cannot rest in its source, but must perforce be externalized. Actually, this is the basic problem on which all spirituality, ethical and moral sadhanas are attending. That is, the impulsiveness where the mind rises impulsively or through vasanas from its source. And whenever we are under the control of impulses, we feel we are bound. And when all those impulses have been erased, we are able to rest in the heart. However, when the latent tendencies are there, the mind cannot rest in its source, but must perforce become externalized. This is what happens on waking. For convenience of understanding, one might say that the mind comprises of two parts. The pure I am, which represents its consciousness content, and so, which is the limiting, which is inert and limiting. So the so and so could be the body identity or the mind or both combined. But the I am is still there, which is pure, it is ever present. It is important to emphasize the mind's consciousness content, for it is this which makes it a bridge back to the heart. Now our attention is almost exclusively on the portion which does not matter, the sense of separate individuality and the other thoughts arising from it. What is needed is to switch this attention on to the I am by an appropriate method. So the whole sadhana, which is directly attending to the vasanas that Bhagavan gives, is to withdraw attention from the so and so, the body and the mind content, and put it on the I am content. I am part, which is the consciousness part of the mind. More about the mind. Another significant aspect of the mind which needs to be taken note of is that though the mind consists of thoughts, only the first thought, I am so and so, really matters. Without the individual's attention, the other thoughts cannot appear on the mental horizon, and when such attention is withdrawn, they disappear. Also, there is no interrelationship between the other thoughts, but the thinker, the individual, is equally and essentially connected to all the other thoughts. Therefore, when one is tackling the mind, when one is seeking to control the mind, attention has to be paid to this core thought. All other thoughts, despite their bewildering variety, are merely chaff. So, the author has got us to why attention to the subjective I is so important and so direct, that it is the one thing which is related to everything, and those thoughts are not connected to each other. And when attention of this I is withdrawn, all those thoughts drop away. Therefore, holding on to the I is the chief practice to get back to the heart. Ramana says that the most efficacious area for the control of mind is the constant questing of the validity of our assumption about our identity by asking the question, who am I? Though the form is that of a question, no answer by way of denial, I am not the body, or affirmation that I am the self should be made. I'll repeat that. Ramana says that the most efficacious area for the control of the mind is the constant questing of the validity. It could be questioning of the validity of our assumption that our identity, about our identity, by asking the question, who am I? Though the form is that of a question, no answer by way of denial, I am not the body, or affirmation, I am the self, should be made, for they are mere concepts of the mind's framework. Provided one lets this doubt take over at all possible times, then the true answer would be found from within, from the depth of one's being. So this is a root doubt which one has to retain, he says. The doubt about who am I? And one should not go into the area of answering that I am not the body or I am the self, but just focus the attention on that doubt. Keep that doubt, then the answer will come from the depth of one's being, which is the heart. The other tool suggested by Ramana is to ask, whence am I? Individuality comes on waking and goes while sleeping. Hence, one should inquire about the mind's origin. The whence am I is about mind's origin. Who am I is about stilling the I. Hence, one should inquire about the mind's origin. Such inquiring would make for source awareness, so essential for merging in the heart. When one pays attention to the subject I, using these twin weapons of who am I and whence am I, one acquires the capacity to be alert against thought intrusion. This practice, it makes one alert to thought intrusion, the other thoughts coming. One notices quickly, if not immediately, the straying of attention away from the thinker. The warding off of thoughts is a preliminary necessity. When it is followed by sustained attention on the I, the mind becomes interned and quiet. I'll read that last paragraph once again. When one pays attention to the subject I using these twin weapons, who am I and whence am I, one acquires the capacity to be alert against thought intrusion. One notices quickly, if not immediately, the attention, the straying of attention away from the thinker. The warding off of thoughts is a preliminary necessity. When it is followed by sustained attention on the I, the mind becomes interned and quiet. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We will now have sharing and a practice session of self-enquiry by Shri Dileep Simha.
Namo Ramana. Dhyayet Sharada Chandra Sundaramukam Tamraravindekshana Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatro-Ujwalam Svatmanandarasānubhūti-vibhasham Sarvānavadyāngakam Srimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Ahamaham-iti Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hridi Vishamanasa Swam Chimbata-machatava Pavana-chalana-rudha Atmanishto Bhavatvam. Namo Ramana. We will commence the Atma Vichara by meditating, listening to Bhagavan's Upadesha, and then have a 10 minutes Atma Vichara. I'll be reading today Bhagavan's Upadesha from the book Guruvachaka Kovai, from the chapter Experience of the Truth. The topic is non-association, Asanga. Verse 909. O mind, through the power of your presence, the components of the non-self come together, interact closely and playfully, dance. Without getting internally ruffled, see them all as a mere witness through the Gnana experience, the Swarupa that transcends and remains unattached to them. I repeat, O mind, through the power of your presence, the components, that is the non-self, come together, interact closely and playfully dance. Without getting internally ruffled, see them all as a mere witness through the Gnana experience, the Swarupa that transcends and remains unattached to them. Bhagavan here is bringing our attention to the self, which is here and now, transcends everything, and remains unattached. And it is the mind, through the interaction, as Nandakumarji was saying, either through the vasanas or in the form of a suo-moto explanation of what is object, whatever is appearing to it as objects by attention to it, and describing it, or in either positively or negatively, gets life, gives life to the object, and therefore those objects all appear to be real and playful, and create what is known as bhada, a pain for one to believe as though one is bound. Therefore, Bhagavan is asking the mind, which is attending to the object and interacting with the object, and therefore giving life to it, and
believing it to be real and getting caught in its snare, he's asking us to inquire where through being through the Gnana experience. So the question, who am I or whence am I, as it was explained to us, reveals us the true experience of the self, which is the transcendental truth. Even the mind which is witnessing all the objects and everything, the I, which is the common thread as it was read out in all the objective experience, is also an object to something which is transcendental of the I, where no words can explain, but it can be experienced. Therefore, we can see in that mauna, where there is no explanation, no describing, no affirming or denying, when one is as one is, then the transcendental truth, which is the real substratum, which alone is, becomes available. And through that Gnana experience, Bhagavan is asking the mind to recognize that Gnana experience, recognize that and stop attending to the objects, stop attending to whatever appears as objects, whether it is the I itself as an object, or a thought which is appearing to the I as an object, or it is a gross object that is appearing. Because if we attend to that, we give life to it. They start to play, they start to capture our attention, and we feel as though we are a jiva. Therefore, it is said we are experiencing a jiva bhava. It's a bhava, it's an imagination that we are experiencing, that we are limited. While truly our nature here and now is that of the transcendental truth, which never comes, never goes, where there is nothing but the self. And by recollecting that Gnana experience, Bhagavan is suggesting the mind again and again to move away from the objective experience back to the source, which is the real non-association, real non-asanga, not running away from the experiences like we normally think, running away from family, being alone, all of them as real asanga. But we don't understand that the mind is still thinking that home is real as an object, running away to some alien place is still real as an object. But Bhagavan is saying here, all objective knowledge which is appearing has to be questioned. Therefore, through the Gnana experience, to see that transcendental truth which is ourself here and now. And that is what Atma Vichara again and again makes us do. And therefore, the path of Vichara is nothing but the experience of the truth here and now. It is not different. When, as Nandakumarji was saying, the vasanas lose their power to pull us out into the snare of the object, then it becomes sahaja. Until that, we have to practice it with effort, and which is what we do with Atma Vichara. And the net result, when we are practicing or when it becomes the sahaja, is the same. This experience of the self, the undivided self. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. For the next 10 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing of Devikalotra Jnana Vicharapadalam by Dr. Kalarani Rengaswamy.
ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய. அருணாச்சலம் என அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலம். Namo Ramana to all. With the abundance grace of Bhagavan, we are meditating on Devi Kalotra Jnana Vicharapadalam, very graciously given to us by Bhagavan in Tamil. And the last satsang we saw for a Jnani, for an Abhyasi, who inclines to attain only mukti and nothing else, there is no need to follow the niyamas such as nama archana, prostration to kshetrapida and all. It's not required even to perform the rites for their ancestors such as Tithi or Pitru Pujas. Once, Muruganar was seen very excited, wearing a white dhoti, moving here and there with great anxiety. Bhagavan asked him, "What is the matter?" Muruganar said, "Today is my mother's Tithi and I am looking for Shastris to perform the rites for my mother. They have not yet arrived." Bhagavan said, "Why worry? I am one Brahmin here." Muruganar was shocked and left the idea of doing Tithi. Bhagavan wants to insist that for Mumukshu who incline to get mukti alone, there is no necessity to perform Pitru Karma. Next year, what happened? Muruganar was carrying a whole jackfruit to be cut and served along with the food served in the ashram. Again, Bhagavan asked, "What's special today? You are giving jackfruit." Muruganar very calmly said, "It is my Amma's Tithi." Bhagavan laughed and said, "Oh, you have not come out of that attachment." That's all. Muruganar gave mukti to Amma's Tithi. Likewise, in this song, Bhagavan says, "Nemamum Chetra Pidatil Nigalchevai Nama Archanai Pitidar Narkarumam Pu Maruvum Tirtha Nal Yathirai." Having a holy dip in Punya Tirthas like Ganga, Yamuna, Kaveri, Godavari, likewise, those rivers, they are not needed for mumukshus. Likewise, famous vratas such as Mahashivratri, Vaikunta Ekadasi, Pratoshakala vratas, Krishna Janmashtami, Ramanavami, they all give good fruit, no wonder. But Bhagavan says they are not necessary for mumukshus because they require no palas, no fruit out of these vratas because they have already attained them all. There are Desar Varadas. They give immediate fruit. They are very powerful, no doubt. When Putra Kameshwari Yoga is performed, there is immediate pala. Sudarshana Yoga has its immediate fruit. Varuna Japa has its effect. But of course, they all should be performed with great trust. I'll tell you an example. Once there was no rain at all in a particular village for nearly 2 years. So there was no agricultural operation which made people to starve. Some were moving out of that village because of that. At that juncture, someone suggested that if Varna Sukta Japa is performed, Varna Bhagavan will get pleased and pour rain. So people in that village fixed a date for that Varna Japa, and all were walking to the temple to participate in that Japa. It was a very hot day. In that crowd, a boy of 6 years, he was carrying an umbrella. All laughed at him and said, "Hey, see this little one. It's going to rain. That's why this boy is carrying umbrella." The boy asked them, "Where are we going?" "To participate in Varna Japa." All said, "What will happen because of that Japa?" The boy asked. People said, "It is believed that rain may come after that Japa." The boy said, "Don't say rain may come, it will come. And while returning home, I should not get drenched, isn't it? That is why I am carrying an umbrella." All again laughed. But actually what happened? After the Japa, all others got drenched except that 6-year-old boy while returning. Likewise, Vradas, yogas are to be performed with that great belief. But of course, they are not at all required for mumukshas because he is not concerned about all these worldly happenings. He aspires only for that mukti because those karmas like Vradas, Tirthayatra, yoga are to be performed with mind, with the mind. Only if there is a mind, these karmas can be performed. But Abhyasi, what is his karma? Abidance. Practice for abidance of the mind in the self and be still. For this, he need not have to do any karma. Na karma is the best karma that he is supposed to do, says Bhagavan. The next stanza, Taruma Tarumam Tarum Palan Illai. In the same, it's written, Maruvu Tiri Ulaga Mannum Karumamillai Ella Karumam Ihandidu Ella Vidattum Ulaga Acharam Iga. Destroy what all karma was performed earlier. Leave alone all the worldly aspirations, worldly activities, because catching hold of those activities there remains ahankara or ego, which has to be merged in the self with the help of mind. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing of Atma Bodham by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande.
Whoa. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviram Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Jnanamulam Gurur Murti, Pujamulam Gurur Padam, Mantramulam Vakyam, Mokshamulam Guru Kripa. do a little recap of verse number 15 that we did Manan on last time. On account of its union with the 5 sheets, pure Atma appears to be like them, just as a crystal takes after the color of a blue cloth when it comes in contact with. The human personality comprises of the Atman and the 5 layers of matter enveloping it. These layers of matter are called the koshas. The 5 koshas that we are aware of, Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, the Manomaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, and Anandamaya kosha. If you really see, if nowadays they advertise for the different types of workshops, what do they really do? If you really see, they make you sit down quietly and give you little food. So basically they're touching the food sheet, which is the Annamaya kosha. And then obviously they will make you do physical yoga, hatha yoga they'll make you do. So still they're touching the food sheet only and Annamaya kosha. Then what happens is they will make you do some physical pranayama they'll make you do. So they will touch the pranama, the pranamaya sheet. Oh, then you feel a little better because of taking in prana. Because of taking in more oxygen into your system, you will feel that much more better, more oxygenated, and you will feel a little better. And then what happens? Then they will take you into the mental aspect where they make you remember things. They'll teach you shlokas, make you mental, to remember various shlokas and ask you to repeat it. Then they touch the Manomaya kosha also. Then they'll say, okay, let's analyze this. Okay, the statements that have been made in the Vedas, let's analyze it. So that's they touch the Vijnanamaya kosha. And in these workshops, what they do is, because of going through this, you may have a little bit of touch into the bliss, into the Anandamaya kosha. You may go into a little bit into the Anandamaya kosha, and then you start again the next day. So they have another 1 week workshop, 10-day workshop. Again, they start with the Annamaya kosha, and they'll again go down the same path. Again, they go back to the Annamaya kosha. So what is really happening in all these workshops that are advertised everywhere is they're touching the sheets. They're touching the 5 sheets. But they're really not touching the real stuff, So it's there and there and there and there. That's what this verse number 15 is saying. They are called sheets because, like a sheath or scabbard covering a sword, they conceal the Atman. So what are they doing? And what happens in many of our cases also, every day what we do, we may do pranayama, we may do hatha yoga. We are only touching the sheets. We are really not going to the real self. This is a wake-up call for each one of us. They have no real contact with the Atman, just as a scabbard has no contact with the sword. They are figuratively described as one inside the other sheath, and being the outermost sheath, and the bliss sheath being the innermost. The idea of one being inside the other basically means is one is more subtler than the other. And the subtler one, the idea being made is the other indicate that the inner sheath is subtler than the outer. As a subtler entity permeates the grosser, sorry, 1 second. As a subtler entity permeates the grosser, so the subtler sheath permeates the grosser sheath. When the vital air sheath is said to be inside the food sheath, it only means that the former is subtler than the other. Atman is immaculate. See, this is
this is a very important thing that Bhagavan touches upon, is the Atman. He doesn't want you to go around, with all the sheets and try to understand this and that. He wants you to get to the real stuff. So Bhagavan says, Atman is immaculate. It can never be contaminated by the layers of matter enveloping it. As a result of the identification with the material layers, the properties of the latter are superimposed on the Atman. So these are just superimpositions. They are not real. But what happens? All our life, what happens is we are just in with these sheets and we are just trying to eat good food. We are just trying to do pranayama and pastrika, whatever it is that we think is important for us, feel good, but we are really not touching the real stuff. So he says, remove such false superimpositions and come to experience the absolute infinite nature of the Atman. Reflect carefully upon and analyze the 5 layers of matter. Detach yourself gradually from the influence of each one of them. The discrimination of the superimposed layers of the personality and recognition of your real nature as the Supreme Self is termed as discrimination of the 5 sheets, which is called Panchakosha Viveka. Panchakosha Viveka is really to understand when you do 80 and say, excuse me, that this is not true, then a point will come when you say you will be with the truth. And that's what is called Panchakosha Viveka. So let's do Manana on the next verse number 16. Request, I think Revathi is going to play the verse which we have recorded from Sapna. Thank you, Revathi. And thank you, Sapna, too. One should, through discriminative thinking, separate the pure innermost self from the enveloping sheets, as one separates rice from the husk, etc., by thrashing with a pestle. So again, the focus is coming narrower and narrower to really understanding who you really are. The previous verse points out how the pure self appears tainted because of its association with the 5 material layers. You can regain your infinite nature of the self by withdrawing your identification with these matter layers. This process is indicated by the metaphor of thrashing paddy and separating the rice from its coverings. We know how rice is thrashed. When it's thrashed, then the rice comes out. Rice has 2 coverings, the bran and the husk. To remove them, the paddy is first pounded using a pestle and mortar and then sieved for separating the rice. The pounding of paddy suggests a comparison to the hard and grueling experiences in the world which make you more mature and introvert in life. Thus, gradually you detach yourself from the gross physical body and the external world. When your mind turns introvert, you take to discrimination, self-analysis and meditation. You recognize the pure self beyond the layers of matter. The Hindu religious literature and practices around in such suggestion implicates. Rituals in Hinduism suggest the mode of detaching oneself from the material entanglements and realizing the self within. A typical example is the offering of fruits. It's a beautiful example. A typical example is the offering of fruits by devotees to the temple or gods. Why do we offer? Why do we go and offer fruits? It's like, why do we put vibhuti on our head? To really tell us, remind us that the body is just ash, that's what it is, and nothing more than that. So similarly, a typical example is offering of fruits by devotees to the temple or gods. The priest in the temple or guru receives it from the devotees. In the long journey to temples, the ideal fruit that would stay fresh without decaying is coconut. A fruit is the product of a tree. It is the result, the effect produced. Similarly, the result or product of all your past activities, karma, is your present vasanas or desires. When your vasanas and desires are removed from you, you gain Godhood. So this is very important. So if you antarkana, all sadhana is for doing antarkana shuddhi. When you do antarkana shuddhi, then you are with the self. All these vasanas are just basically covering. So man minus vasanas, desire is God. So it's beautifully said. If you remove all your desires and all your what they call asangoham, all attachments, you remove all attachments or no desires, then you become God. Both fruit and vasanas are similar in the sense that they are end products. A fruit is chosen to represent your vasanas. When you offer a fruit to the Lord, it signifies offering of your vasanas or desires and thereby unfolding your inner self. I'll read this sentence. Very, very powerful sentence this is. And we must do manana on this. When you offer a fruit to the Lord, it signifies offering of your vasanas or desires and thereby unfolding your inner self. That's why we offer fruits to God. Your visit to temple therefore symbolizes exhaustion of your vasanas and desires and realization of yourself. But what is it for many of us? We go to God. We are super beggars. We all go and offer, God, I'm going to offer this to you. We'll have a barter system. I will offer you fruits and coconuts, but you have to give me X, Y, Z. And then, so God, that's how we offer it, make offerings to God. But actually, the real thing is that when you offer it, you're offering your desires and vasanas, by which what happens? Realization of yourself happens. It really tells you who you really are. The coconut is the most popular offering in the temples of India. Besides the fact that coconut stays fresh for many days, its choice of offering has a deeper significance. The coconut has a smooth skin on the outside, while inside it is coarse, knotted up with coir. The coir grows out of the hard shell. Within the hard shell is the kernel. The cover is removed from the shell, leaving a small tuft on it. So what we do is when we remove all the thing, we leave a little thing on top. It says the coir is removed from the shell, leaving a small tuft on one side, and the coconut is offered to the priest. The priest breaks the shell and tears the tuft of coir away, exposing 3 black spots on the shell. We must have seen that. The pure white kernel is then exposed, the prayers are chanted, and the coconut is offered to the deity. The smooth outer skin of the coconut represents your gross body. The smooth outside, if you look, everything we do for the outer body. The smooth outer skin of the coconut represents your gross physical body. Within the gross body is the subtle body, consisting of all your desires and attachments. The coir matted together represents your entanglement with the desires and attachments in the world. These desires and attachments arise from your causal body, which again is represented by the hard shell. It's a nice example comparing this, the three bodies with the coconut. When you go to the temple of Guru, you leave all your worldly devices and attachments, except those that are necessary for your spiritual evolution. These few desires are left in you solely for your spiritual pursuit, and as symbolized by the small tuft of the little tuft of coir. The removal of the tuft means the exhaustion of the last traces of desires in you. The breaking of the shell is the transcendence of the causal body, and the exposure of the kernel is realization of the Supreme Self. The beautiful example. The exposure of the three spots on the shell indicates the opening of the third eye, called the eye of wisdom, Jnanam Chakshu. This eye is a philosophical concept. Your physical eye limits your vision to the pluralistic world only. The eye of wisdom gives you the vision of the Supreme Self. So it's a beautiful example of the coconut and how it maps to us. But finally, what's important, Bhagavan says, is we have to do self-enquiry. We have to understand who we really are, and we should not stop with the sheets and continuously be with the sheets, because you're only playing with the top. You're only playing with the top of the coconut and the coir and the hard shell, but you're really not going within and understanding the real truth. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing of Ramanacentre by Sri Ujwal Jagadeesh.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We have been meditating on the verses of Ramanacentre written by Ganapati Muni, and which has been compiled in this format and which has been chanted in the presence of Ramana by Ramana himself. And he is the one who has titled it Ramanacentre. And we were in the set of verses where joyously Ganapati Muni is singing the glory of Ramana and says, "Oh Ramana, compassion is not your quality, but it is your true nature. न करुणा गुण रमणा तव विदाम्पते रमणा हृदय तेजस रमणा सहज वैवते रमणा न करुणा गुण रमणा तव विदाम्पते रमणा हृदय तेजस रमणा सहज वैवते रमणा प्रसरतादित शुभ विलोकितं रमणते सकृत् फलतु मे कृतं रमण जन्मिनाम् अयि भवान् गुरु अभिदाशयस्तव महानुरु जगदहं पर स्फुरति मे त्रयं सदभिदं गिरा तव विसंशयम् त्वदुपदेशतो गलति संविधा मयि निरन्यया सदहमूर्भिधा करुणे गुणवल्ला रमणा निनगे ಒಡೆಯನೇ ರಮಣ ಹೃದಯದಿ ಹೊಳೆಯುವ ರಮಣ ಸಹಜ ಸ್ವರೂಪವೇ ರಮಣ ಹರಿಸು ನನ್ನೆಡೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಕರುಣೆ ನೋಟವಾ ರಮಣನೇ ಸುಕೃತವು ಫಲವ ಗಳಿಸಲಿ ರಮಣನೇ ಗುರು ಸಕಲ ಜೀವಕ್ಕೂ ಅಭೇದ ಅನಂತವು ನಿನ್ನ ಹೃದಯವು ಜಗಜೀವ ಪರ ಮುರಾಗಿ ಸ್ಫುರಿಸದೆ ಏಕಾತ್ಮವಾಗಿದೆ ತವ ನುಡಿ ನಿಸ್ಸಂಶಯ ತ್ವದುಪದೇಶದಿ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಅರಳಿತು ನನಗೂ ಸತ್ಯಕ್ಕೂ ಇರುವ ಭೇದ ಅಳಿಯಿತು ತ್ವದುಪದೇಶದಿ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಅರಳಿತು ನನಗೂ ಸತ್ಯಕ್ಕೂ ಇರುವ ಭೇದ ಅಳಿಯಿತು. Ganapati Muni, who got the first spoken Upadesha from Bhagavan Ramana. Bhagavan Ramana, as a boy of 16, had come to Tiruvannamalai, but he was ever abiding in the silence of the self. He did not feel the need of communicating through speech. But we have seen that he used to speak to Palaniswamy whenever required, not too much, but whenever required, and to Shivaprakasham Pillai and Gambiram Sheshayar, to their questions, to the questions of true seekers, he answered them with his hand writings. He wrote on the slate, or he wrote on the sand, or he wrote in small pieces of paper, and they were collected. And Shivaprakasham Pillai's, the answers which he got, he compiled in a small booklet called Who Am I? And Gambiram Sheshayar compiled them into a small booklet called Self-enquiry. But it was for Ganapati Muni, who was a great tapasvi, maha-tapasvi, who had understood all the Vedas, all the Shastras, all the Upanishads, and had done Kotyanukoti japa of great mantras like the Panchakshari mantra, the Srividya mantra, Gayatri mantra, and yet he felt there was some lacuna. He felt that he had not understood the true meaning of tapas. And he came and surrendered to Bhagavan Ramana, who was then called to the Brahmana Swami, who was shining in the Virupaksha cave. And one hot afternoon, it was the auspicious day of Kartika Deepam around that time, where the whole Tiruvannamalai was filled with people, lakhs and lakhs of people who had come to see the Deepam. But the presence of Ramana there was nobody around Bhagavan Ramana, and Ramana was seated as if he was waiting for Ganapati Muni to come. And Ganapati Muni fell flat saluting Bhagavan Ramana, and it is told that he did abhishekam to the feet of Bhagavan Ramana with his tears, and he told, I have done all that is required to be done. Still, I do not understand what is the true meaning of tapas. Can you please tell me what is tapas? Asked Ganapati Muni. And to this question, Bhagavan opened his mouth and he gave the first spoken Upadesha, telling him, find out from where the I thought arises and merge at its source. That is tapas. Find out from where the nada of the mantra arises from within and merge at its source. That is true tapas. And getting this first spoken Upadesha, Ganapati Muni had the experience of the self, the joy of the self, the experience of such chit ananda, that which is ever existing, that which is full of awareness, and that which is full of bliss. He had the experience of this, and as if to tell his experience, to explain his experience, in this verse, Ganapati Muni says, O Ramana, I had the experience of the self which is infinite, ananta. I had the experience of that self which is only one, where there is no differences, the differences of myself and the God and the world. I had that experience with your Upadesha, Tvadupadeshadi, Tvadupadeshato Galati Samvida, Mai Niranyaya, Sadahamor Bida. By your Upadesha, I had this understanding, this jnana, that I and the Satya are not different. The Satya that I am searching for is not something, a different object that I have to attain. It is my own true nature. This I understood by your Upadesha. There is a conversation which happens in the presence of Bhagavan Ramana, a devotee says, I want to see God and I want to talk to God, just like how Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to speak to God and you used to have a relationship with God. I want to have such a relationship. I want to talk to God. I want to see Him. And Ramana told, yes, that is possible. If you can speak to anybody else in the world, you can speak to me, you can speak to your friends, you can speak to your relatives and people around. You can speak to God too. Just like how we in the Jagrata Avastha, we see so many things. But in the Swapna Avastha, in the dream, we see many more things which are more subtle. You feel that you are traveling from one place to another place in no time. You are able to pass through the doors. You are able to pass through the walls. You see that there are subtle experiences which are happening in the dream. And in the deep sleep, there is no differences. There is that oneness that we experience in the deep sleeps. So it depends on the perceiver. In the deep sleep, we only have the experience of that oneness. But in the dream avastha, we may have an experience where we feel the presence of God. The God has come into our dreams and we are having a conversation to God. And if we are so much in love with God and we are remembering His presence, okay, that presence of the God, it may manifest in the Jagrata Avastha too. So that is what we see in the great sages and saints. They have a relationship with the God. They see the God in the Jagrata Avastha. But Ramana reminds us that is not enough. It is not enough if we see God as a separate being and the world as a separate being and ourselves as a separate being. There is no use. One has to come to that state where there is oneness. And Ramana tells this beautiful story. Long ago, there was a great saint called Namadev. And Namadev was so devoted to Vithala that he used to have darshan of Vithala. He used to speak to Vithala just like how he spoke to others. He used to eat with Vithala, sleep with Vithala, and play with Vithala. So Vithala was his best friend, and he spent all his time with Vithala. But he had not attained that supreme point where he understood that he, Vithala, and the world was actually one power which manifests as all these various things. So to teach him a lesson, Vithala did a plan. And in that plan, Namdev was invited to Gora Kumbha's house. The Gora Kumbha, the potter devotee. And in his house, the great saints like his Namdev's contemporaries like Tukaram, Jnaneshwar, all were present. And after having a good meal in the presence of Gora Kumbha, they were all sitting and chatting. And Jnaneshwar stood from his place and he told, "Oh Gora Kumbha, we are very, very delighted that we are here in your place and we spent a beautiful time remembering Vithala, singing his songs and eating the prasadam of Vithala. But you are a potter. You, every day you check whether the pot is, whether it is baked or not, whether it is proper or not. You check it with your stick, special stick that you use to tap and see whether the pot is properly baked or not." And he told, showing their heads, these are all the pots made by Brahma. So why don't you please check these pots and tell which of these pots are matured and which of these pots are immature. So everybody sat down and they submitted their head. And Gora Kumbha, with the same stick that he used to test the pots that he baked, he started tapping each head with that stick and started tapping and telling whether it was properly baked or not. But when he came to Namdev got angry, and then he got up from his seat and said, "Oh, you potter, how dare you come and tap me on my head and test whether I am matured or not? How dare you do that?" He stood up. Then as soon as he stood up, Gorakumbha declared that all the pots are baked, but this pot alone, the pot of Namdev, it is unbaked, it is immature. Soon as he heard that, everybody started laughing at him. And the Gorakumbha, Namdev, who was there, Namdev was he told, "You do not know who am I? I am Panduranga's best friend. I'm going to complain about you all to Panduranga and I'm going to teach you a lesson." So he told, and he went to Panduranga crying. And Panduranga asked, "What happened, Namdev?" And Namdev told what all had happened. Then Panduranga told, "Why did you also not just submit just like others and submitted your head, and you would have tapped one small tap on your head? Why did you not do that?" Then Namdev says, "Why should I have done that? Am I not your best friend? I am not the most maturedest pot, if that is a word. I am not your best friend. I am not so matured by your presence. Why should I submit myself?" Everybody laughed, and I am very, very disappointed by it. And Vittala, he told, this is the right time to teach him a lesson. He told, "If I tell you, you will not be able to understand. Oh, Namdev, you're my best friend. So why don't you go to a forest in the south of India, and there is one old temple, and inside the temple there is one great jnani, a great master, and he will tell you the truth." So listening to this, Namdev went to that forest, and there he saw an old temple, and there he searched here and there. He could not find any sadhu or any jnani there. But he was about to leave. He saw something inside the Garbhagudi of the temple. There was a Shivalinga. And on that Shivalinga, an old man had kept his leg on the Shivalinga and was sleeping. And Namdev wondered, can this be the jnani which Panduranga has told? No, it is impossible. How can a jnani put his leg on this Shivalinga? Doesn't he know better? Chi. There is no jnani here. Panduranga has mistakenly told me the wrong address. So he was ready to go. But before going, he thought he should wake up this old man and tell him to take out his leg from the linga. So he came to the old man and he told, "Oh, old man, wake up. Then as soon as the old man woke up, he told, "Oh, it's Namdev. Panduranga has sent you." Then as soon as he heard this, he was shocked. How can this old man know that I have come, I am Namdev, and Panduranga has sent? So he told, "Oh, great jnani, you seem to be a great person, but is it right for you to keep your legs on the Shivalinga?" And the jnani told, "I'm very, very old. I do not know where I have kept my linga. Can you please keep my leg where there is no Shivalinga?" And Namdev kept the Shivalinga in another place. There a Shivalinga arose. And he kept in another place. There also one more Shivalinga came. So wherever he tried to keep the Shivalinga, his leg, the Shivalinga appeared everywhere. And he was puzzled and he understood this was the Leela of Panduranga to teach me a lesson. Then he realized there is no other place where there is no Shivalinga. So he kept the leg of that jnani on his own lap. And he himself became a Shivalinga. At that point of time, Namdev understood that how foolish I was to think that this world was real, people laughing at me was real. It was all the Leela of Panduranga. And how foolish I was to think that Panduranga was separate from me and I was his best friend and I had to do all these works for him. I had to play with him. I had to give him food. How foolish I was that I was separate from Shivalinga. I was separate from Panduranga. I am that divine Shakti. And that divine Shakti is everything was understood by Namdev. And this is the Upadesha that Bhagavan has given us to understand that we are all one. The Jagat, Jiva and the Para is that one Shakti which manifests when we get back to our own true nature, the source from where this I arises. We get back to that oneness that we experience unknowingly in the deep sleep, we will experience in the waking state, and that is jnana, says Bhagavan Ramana. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing by Dr. Sarada. She will be sharing her thoughts on Ashtottaram, Ramana Ashtottaram, written by Vishwanatha Swami.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana. Shining as the self in all beings. With the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana. In this part of the satsang, we are meditating on the Ramana Ashtottara by Vishwanatha Swami. We are now meditating on the names wherein Vishwanatha Swami has described the stay of Bhagavan Ramana joining Guru Murta, and subsequent to that, immediately after that, comes the name. After Chutavatyam Samasinaya Namaha, we get the word Churnita Akhila Vibramaya Namaha. So we had Bhagavan seated in the mango orchard. There he would sometimes speak to Palani Swami. He had instructed him about the meaning of Adhyatma Ramayanam. With Palani Swami would actually bring many books from the library in the Tiruvanamalai town, and he would find it difficult to read many of them. They were all Vedantic books, probably in Tamil and Malayalam. And Bhagavan would explain the text, or he read those texts in the context of Palani Swami bringing them, and he felt, oh, all these texts are describing what I have experienced. They are talking about my experience. Then he understood that there is a parlance, there is a technical term to describe the experience. It is called Atmajnana. The self is called Brahman. So it is also called Brahmajnana. It is called Atma Vidya, Brahma Vidya. All these terms are used, and he understood. He became articulate in a sense about the experience which he had. And he also explained, helped Palani Swami to do his daily parayana of Adhyatma Ramayana, which was in the Malayalam script. And Bhagavan learnt Malayalam at that time, which later in the divine plan was to make him express the Upadesa Saram in Malayalam. He translated the Upadesa Saram into Malayalam himself. So Bhagavan interacted with Palani Swami, and he explained to him the Adhyatma Ramayana. The first Vedantic text which Bhagavan spoke about was thus the Adhyatma Ramayana, in which everyone is aware, all the characters of Adhyatma Ramayana are aware of Rama being the supreme truth. Whether it is Kausalya who gives birth to him, or even Ravana who is waiting to be beheaded by him, they are all aware of the underlying supreme truth, that Rama is only that truth. And Sita Devi also explains this to Anjaneya in Adhyatma Ramayana, saying Rama does not even move. Rama does nothing. He is just that supreme truth, which is all pervading and therefore immovable, unmoving. Achala, not different from Arunachala. And I, as the energy of Rama, it is I who manifests all that is happening. And people say Rama is doing all this. Sita Devi explains each and every interchange in that Adhyatma Ramayana, each and every discussion, each and every dialogue brings one back to the truth of the supreme oneness of the oneness alone existing. And this was the text which Swami was doing Parayana, and Bhagavan would sometimes explain this to him. But by and large, he was not speaking to anyone, even to Swami, because Swami says that even when he was in Gurumurtam, Bhagavan once, because Bhagavan was finding it so, Bhagavan was hardly eating anything, and he was seated all the time. He was also very badly constipated. So when he would sometimes get up and with difficulty he would pass his stools, and he says, Bhagavan says his head would start reeling sometimes. So when he was thus moving back to sit down, he was about to fall. And Swami held him. And then also Bhagavan, only through gestures, he asked him, why are you holding me? And Swami said, Swami, you were about to fall. That's why I have held you. So Bhagavan could not be touched. Bhagavan would not speak much. And after leaving the Chutavatika also, when Bhagavan decided to leave the mango orchard, it was that he just decided he went with Swami, and there again Swami says it was through gestures that he indicated that Swami should go to beg for alms in a different direction and not come back to meet him. So Bhagavan was in that great silence, but Bhagavan says it was not a vow of silence that he maintained. It was just that he says, I just did not speak. And people said, I was in Mauna. So his uncle Nelliyappayar had come, and all his, if at all he had any hopes of convincing his nephew to get back home, that those hopes were dashed to the ground. Churnita akhila vibhramaya namaha. All illusions are destroyed by this great one, says Vishwanatha Swami. All illusions are destroyed. It would then be the turn of Mother Aragamma to come. She too came. She too came to beg of him to return home. And with what illusion did she come? She came with the illusion that, yes, Nelliyappayar might have failed to convince him, but she would succeed, because such is a mother's love, and such would be the mother's persuasive capacities. She came, it is said, she had prepared very many tasty snacks which Bhagavan liked as a young boy. She had prepared them not to entice him back home, but with the love that she wanted to give all this to him. It was such a long time since she had seen him. A mother always loves to feed her child. That is the first thing that a mother would like to do. She wants to feed her child. She wants to see that the child's stomach is full. She would always want to feed the child with what the child loves to eat also, very often. It is a father who might say, no, this is good for the child, this is not good for the child. Of course, every mother has a father in her, and every father has a mother in him. But normally, a mother just likes to pamper the child. And so in order to pamper the child, to give him what he loved to eat, she had prepared those things. By that time, Bhagavan had moved to Pavarakundra, the small hillock adjoining Arunachala. It is a fairly steep climb, and Aragamma in those days it might have been, now it has been cleared, the steps have been cleared and made quite even and smooth. In those days it might have been rugged. We do not know whether there was a proper staircase also. Mother had to climb up. She came with Nagaswamy, who had his, what was called the Michaelmas vacation, or the Christmas vacation. It was about a week or 10 days time which he had in which to convince Bhagavan to return home. And she came, and the first illusion that must have been broken for her was the image which she would have held of her Venkatraman when she came. When he had left home, he had beautiful long hair, what we call the jata, the kudumi, and his hair was very beautiful, I believe, black, slightly curly hair, wavy hair, and of course, he was 6 feet tall, he was in good health, his body must have been quite lustrous, and that was the image of her son. And she came and she saw here a young man whom she could hardly recognize. Nelliyapayar had probably warned her, saying, "You will not be able to recognize him. You may find it even heartrending to see him in that state. It was difficult even for me to see him in that way." And Nelliyapayar would have told her that I could recognize him only by the red mole on his right foot. Otherwise, he is practically unrecognizable. But Azhagammal had to see it for herself to believe that. And she saw him. That's the first destruction of all illusions. Here was this young man. She knew, of course, she would have known with a mother's absolute instinct. Yes, this is Venkatraman. She may not have needed that mole to recognize him by. She would have known the instant she saw him, this is my child. And that would have even hurt her more, because here he must have become fairly thin, actually very thin, almost. Jaisurama says he was skin and bone when she saw him in the Arunachaleshwara temple, because what was he eating? Just about one handful of food in a day. And that too, on some days he may not eat it. And that too, on other days it may not be available. And so here he was thin, skin and bone, covered with grime and dust. His hair was matted. His nails were long and curled. And she saw this boy. And to her mother, and here he was sitting on a rock, on some rock, in the open air. Yes, there were devotees seated around him, but what kind of a state is he in? Is this a good state to be in? For the mother, very beautifully, Shuddhananda Bharati describes her state, and how we can go on to see that first, the illusion of outer beauty, how the beautiful body should be, that perception was broken. Then Bhagavan goes on, of course, to break the illusions of what we call in the coming weeks. But the mothers, for all of us, Bhagavan is there to break our illusions regarding what any concept is. We may think this is the concept of beauty, this is the concept of love, loving somebody. What does it mean to love someone? What does it mean to understand the divine? What does it mean to submit to the divine? What does it mean to experience the silence? And how everything other than that is an illusion. And Ramana, be it for Mother Azhagamma or for anyone whom he draws into his net, will not stop until every illusion is pounded to dust. Such is his strong mercy. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We will have the chanting of Aksharamanamalai by Srimati V. Radha and Vallabh Srinivasa.
अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल பொடியாமயக்கியன் போதத்தை பறித்து உன் போதத்தை காட்டினை அருணாச்சலா ஓ கும்பரவுமில் பொது வெளியினில் அருள் போராட்டம் காட்டருணாச்சலாம் பௌதிகமாவுடல் பற்று அற்று நாடும் முன் பவிசு கண்டூர அருணாச்சலா மலை மருந்திட நீ மலை திடவோ அருள் மலை மருந்தாயுள் அருணாச்சலா மானம் கொண்டுருபவன் மானத்தை அடிக்க விமானம் இல்லாதோள் அருணாச்சலா மிஞ்சிடில் கெஞ்சிடும் கொஞ்ச வரிவனியன் வஞ்சியாதருள் அருணாச்சலா மீகாமன் இல்லாமல் மாற்றலை களம் ஆகாமற் காத்தருள் அருணாச்சலா முடியடி காணா முடிவிடுத்தனை நேர் முடிவிட கடநிலை அருணாச்சலாம் மூங்கிலின் முன்காட்டு முகுரமகாதனை தூக்கி அணைந்தருள் அருணாச்சலாம் மெய்யத்தின் மனமென் மலரணையில் நம்மை கலந்திட அருணாச்சலாம் மேன்மேல் தாழ்ந்திடு மெல்லிய சேர்ந்து நீ மேன்மையுற்றனையன் அருணாச்சலா மைமய நீ தருள் மையினால் உனது உண்மை வசமாக்கினை அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமணமாலை வாழி. நமோ ரமண.
Namo Ramana. We will conclude today's satsang with the Ashtottara puja. The puja will happen at Sri Dileep Simha's altar. The Ashtottara puja will be done by Sri Dileep Simha. The chanting of Ashtottara will be done by Prarthana, Vaibhavji, Uma Shripati and Ashwini Balaji. Namo Ramana.
नमो रमण. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्री रमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावली अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्विमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः. ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः. ॐ गुरवे नमः. ॐ अखण्ड संविदाकाराय नमः. ॐ महोजसे नमः. ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः. ॐ जगद्गीतावताराय नमः. ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः. ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः. ॐ सुन्दराय तपःफलाय नमः. ॐ कमनीय सुचारित्राय नमः. ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः. ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीन मानसाय नमः. ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः. ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः. ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः. ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः. ॐ ॐ तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरावेशतः शौर्णशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपःशपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः ॐ चूर्णिकाखिलविभ्रमाय नमः ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः ॐ त्रिगुणातीताय नमः ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः ॐ विराजदशराकृतये नमः ॐ उद्दिक्तनयनाय नमः ॐ पूर्णाय नमः ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः ॐ गम्भीराय नमः ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः ॐ दक्षिणस्य निभाय नमः ॐ धीराय नमः ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः ॐ स्वराजे नमः ॐ महर्षये नमः ॐ भगवते नमः ॐ ईड्याय नमः
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः ॐ विमलाय नमः ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः ॐ आप्ताय नमः ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः ॐ समदृशे नमः ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः ॐ सत्याय नमः ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः ॐ श्रीशोणाचलहृद्भूतस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्नसंशयाय नमः ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः ॐ सौम्याय नमः ॐ आत्मवते नमः ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः ॐ महाभागाय नमः ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः ॐ विनताय नमः ॐ विनुताय नमः ॐ विप्राय नमः ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः ॐ वृक्षान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः ॐ स्मरणात् बन्धमोचकाय नमः ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः ॐ संसाराणवतारकाय नमः ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः ॐ गुहाय नमः ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः ॐ देवतमाय नमः ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः।
ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजलिं प्राप्य तद् दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः ऋन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शनसुखमङ्गलमुखसकलजीवहितसम्मुख ब्रह्मसङ्घिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानन्दपुष्ट परममहर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡು ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।